All right, welcome to the nitty gritty.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to have a very good friend of mine in here today.
It's true.
Bobbi Heaney.
This is going to be good.
APRN, I just found out. There's registered
We're
nurses.
really good friends.
Then there's
You just found it out.
AP registered nurses. But I did just find something out about you that I didn't know. Hanging out with... So one of my best friends is Bobbi's husband, Brandon. And he told me that you are currently working in the COVID... How do we call it? The COVID ICU or...
Yeah.
At one of Utah's larger hospitals.
Yeah.
We're going to keep it a little hush-hush. But, man, I mean, I knew you worked where you worked, but I didn't know that you were doing that. And so an hour after he left, you know, we all got together and ate lunch, the fantasy football boys the other day. And about an hour after he left, I texted you because I was like, I think this would be such a cool episode with everything going on. Just, I don't know, just
It'll
to
be
kind
really
of
cool to get this kind of perspective.
Right.
I mean, I haven't spoken to
clarity.
anybody that's doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Like we talked about it. We get our information from the news and the internet.
The news is a strong term nowadays. Like, I don't even think they deserve to be called that anymore.
No.
I mean, they're like a step up from TMZ, right?
I don't watch the news.
And then,
Yeah.
you can't.
Like,
And then every scientist on Instagram that thinks that they know.
You can always
Everything.
find. You can always find what you're looking for.
That's kind of true. Yes and no, but I think the other problem with COVID is it came on an election year. And so it was politicized, which makes it even crazier. And so, I don't know, I think we're at that point right now where the current thing's the vaccine, right? And so it's so interesting to see how, what's the word I'm looking for, Andrew?
Divisive.
Yeah, divisive. That's perfect. The vaccine is. So I don't know. I just thought it would be kind of cool to pick your brain and
sure.
kind of see what's going on. But go ahead.
I was just asking, how long have you been, one, a nurse, and then two, in this specific unit?
Yeah. So my normal job is in the outpatient clinics. And I want to say starting in September, I volunteered to be redeployed to the hospital to essentially train for a couple months on COVID, with COVID, learning how the hospital works. And then with we expected the surge, which happened, to kind of be there to help out. So I've been there since September.
Okay.
Are you talking like Thanksgiving, like holiday surge? Is that what you mean?
Well, just
or winter?
No, kind of like the back to school things start opening up. It's just like been a steady trend, if you will.
Right.
And the agreement was through kind of mid-spring, and so right now we're still waiting to hear like about February if I'll be there, but the plan is through this month and January.
So you volunteered to do that?
Yeah.
Why?
I guess I'm all about like learning opportunities, and when again in my lifetime would I get this opportunity, but I also am a team player. I like to be helpful.
Yeah.
So potentially there through like spring, end of spring.
And so how long have you been working as a nurse?
Okay, so I worked as a nurse. So currently I'm working as a nurse practitioner, different from a nurse. I've been an NP for 5 years.
What's the difference? I'm sorry, I don't know the difference.
I
probably just offended you.
No, I'm not offended. So I'm not offended.
You're lucky you can't see behind her mask right now.
now.
She's like, that son of a bitch.
So, okay. So I went to 3 more years of school.
Okay.
Have a doctorate degree, but now I can essentially evaluate, diagnose, and treat.
Okay.
So, as a nurse practitioner under the license that I have.
Okay.
RNs can't do that. So I would say it's similar to a PA.
Right.
If you're familiar with that.
Yep.
So when I see my patients in an outpatient clinic, like they're my patients,
You can write prescriptions
diagnosing
for them.
and treating.
For all intents and purposes, you're their doctor.
Yeah.
They're coming to see you. They're only seeing you.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
So
And so how long so you've been doing that for how long?
5 years.
5 years. and then this opportunity to kind of transition to the hospital came.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's so many questions. This is going to be so
Ask
fun.
away. Just don't ask questions she hates. Like that last one.
I'm one for one.
Just kidding.
Being in the space you're in,
Mm-hmm.
when Corona started, January, February, March, what were your thoughts on it?
Okay.
Like, were you what were you experiencing that people who aren't in your field weren't maybe at that time?
Yeah, it's actually really funny. So, and it's a little hazy too. It's almost,
It probably seems like 10 years ago.
yeah, it's a little
It
hazy.
does seem so
But-
long ago.
I remember
Man.
I was at a dinner with my sister, and we left the dinner, and I was like, nobody's talking about coronavirus. Like, that's my life right now. So February, March, we were in the planning phases of rolling out testing in the outpatient clinics, working a lot, answering a ton of questions, and the rest of the world just like it hadn't reached them yet. And then all of a sudden, March and everything else. So my point is I went to Costco like a month before everyone else did. Like
I was
never
there an
have to
hour
say.
before everybody else
You
did.
started the toilet paper craze then.
Yeah. I was in Costco an hour and a half before they announced Rudy Gobert.
Were you really?
Yep. Because I was supposed to cater for the Pelicans that night.
Oh, yeah.
So I knew about the NBA canceling the season before they announced it. And so we went to Costco to because I'm like, everyone's going to make a run on this place. Honey, we're going on a date.
Yeah.
And we were stocking up at Costco. And I'm not kidding. We were just about done. About 20 minutes before we finished, they announced the NBA season was canceling. And for some reason, that was everybody's like,
That was the
it's real.
domino.
It's real. Right?
When Rudy got it,
Right.
it literally shut the world down.
Oh, and dude, I kid you not. When we were checking out, the flow of traffic coming into the store quadrupled. It was just like that.
Yeah.
It was wild.
So,
Anyway,
like, where were you guys getting information from?
So, the epidemiologists at wherever from across the country.
Okay.
So I would say for me, for the most part across the board, I trust medical people. I don't have like,
that's
and-
crazy.
right? It really is. I feel like it is crazy for the general population. I trust their opinions. I don't think, yeah. And so I was listening to this and I believed them. I was doing my own research, but I was also part of a healthcare organization, and it's better to prepare, right, than just like. And so we were preparing, and
Yeah.
we were. I don't know if that answers your question, but I was never, and to this date, I don't think I've never been scared of the virus personally. But if you can mitigate it by doing some simple things, in my opinion, why not?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Just kidding. But isn't that, it's funny, to hear it come from Bobbi. It's funny that those two simple things that she just said are the two biggest, the most divisive parts of the whole thing, right? Like wearing masks, that's a simple thing to mitigate it. People fight it like crazy, right? And people don't believe epidemiologists, but they believe people on Instagram.
Well, hold on.
You know what I mean?
Let's talk about that, because part of the issue, I believe, we talked about this before we started, is you can always find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And so you've also found medical experts that it's hard to tell if they are or aren't,
Right.
that are
Yes.
each playing the two different sides,
Yeah.
right? Like, masks help. No, they don't.
Right.
The virus is real. No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, and still to this day, is the hardest thing, because I really like information,
Mm-hmm.
but it feels like it's so hard to know where to turn for it when everything is being discredited. And then the only people, a lot of people at least, that you do hear from end up skewing towards one of the two sides.
Well, and I think that's where the politics comes in, right? Because it has that line has been drawn. People that are anti-mask generally fit a political
For sure.
No, I don't. I agree completely. It is very hard to know what is true and what's right. And I would say that's why every person's kind of landed where they've landed, because you got to eventually decide for yourself. The virus is real. The virus is not like other viruses. It's just not. For some people, it's really not that bad. Actually, for a lot of people, the majority of people. But for the people I'm taking care of in the hospital, it's terrible. And there are worse outcomes than death. So maybe the death rate right now, they're predicting 0.5%, right? Which is less than the Spanish flu, but more than the yearly flu,
That's an interesting phrase, though. There are things worse than death. I don't think we're talking about that.
So,
because we're looking at it in that very black and white, there's only this many people dying, right? That's the number people are looking at, but that's interesting. What you just said is are there long-term, permanent?
And I don't think we have any clue. And I think it's going to range from even minor infections. They've done studies on athletes already that, there are some changes in their heart and their heart muscle, even with kind of asymptomatic or very mild infections, to being in the ICU, intubated, end up recovered, don't need to be on a respirator or anything, but now you have chronic lung dysfunction or fibrosis, and your life will never look the same.
So what do you feel when people say it's the flu?
What do I feel?
Does it make you mad? Or is it just you know what? That's okay. You just don't understand.
Yeah. So again, I get that everybody has to live their life, and I see the consequences, right, of businesses and people out of work and all of these things. So I don't know what the right answer is. Either way we would have been the wrong answer. Right. It doesn't really matter. And so, but I agree. True. If we would have said let it fly, that's going to get butchered too.
For sure.
So what was your question?
Just when people say it's just the flu, someone in the medical professional, is it
For some people it is. We've known this with other viruses as well. There can be some long-term sequelae. I don't know if you've heard the term long COVID long haulers now, where you kind of, so your immune system is activated and it can trigger other autoimmune stuff. And I think we're going to get a lot more information in the years to come about that from this specific virus. And maybe it was, it triggered the immune system differently, or I could be way off there. But for some people, it is just the flu. But for some people, I have a brother-in-law who had a very minor infection, but he has maybe 20% of his taste back 2 months later.
Right.
That would suck.
Yeah.
I would really,
Yeah, I have a friend that's 3 months, 3.5 months so far. She has nothing back. Totally fine.
Yeah.
But nothing. No taste or smell.
Do you think part of kind of the panic around it has been just we don't know anything about it?
Yeah.
Do you think it's just we just have no idea what to expect from this thing?
Yeah, and you don't know. I think part of the panic is when there are very, very sick patients, and yes, is that a small percentage of the total COVID people? Yes, but is that going to be you? It's a possibility, because that's the other thing is nobody knows why some people are getting way more sick than others.
So there's still no headway on that. Just kind of being able to figure out.
The comorbidities thing is a big one.
The what?
Comorbidities.
Okay. I don't know what that is.
Under,
so other sicknesses?
Yeah.
Okay.
Obesity is a bad...
Why'd you look at me when you said that?
Well, and I actually pointed at you. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No, what's funny
You
though?
already had
No. This is why I love Bobbi. She would say that, and I love it.
Well, but it's also the truth.
And I don't know. It's weird when you say it doesn't hurt my feelings. She
I
just
hope
keeps
I'm
it
not
real.
hurting your feelings.
You are one of the most refreshing people to be around. I've always said that. Anyway, it's hilarious. I know when I got it, I will admit I was kind of freaking out because my taste and smell went away, but that was about it. I was really fatigued for about 7 or 8 days. I just wanted to lay there and but I wasn't achy. I didn't have a fever, didn't have a sore throat. It was just no taste or smell and just really tired. I've had colds that were 10 times worse than that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like I've always had a pretty good immune system. But yeah, I will admit, based off of hearing those things, it's like, holy crap. And that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you is how many people are you, obviously if somebody's coming into the ICU, you know, they've leveled up to some, they've got to be in there, right? But how many people, and maybe you don't know this, but how many people come into the hospital just based off of fear? Like they know that they tested positive.
Yeah.
They may not be feeling much, but they may have obesity, you know, or another issue, right? And they want to be checked into the hospital because they're just scared.
I don't think anybody wants to be checked into the hospital. I think those patients are being seen more in the outpatient world, urgent care, virtual visit. Okay. This is a very psychological, emotional, mental disease. And it has created a ton of anxiety. Like people describe, you know, I was just sitting around waiting to stop breathing. Like that's a horrible feeling. Right. And then they were fine, you know, like, but even just the thought and the ruminating on this idea is horrible. I can't imagine. But no, I think I think people are actually a little bit scared of the medical system in general.
Right.
And this is the really hard part about working with COVID. If you do go into the hospital like your grandpa, like you will not be able to see family.
You go alone. You just said,
and you don't know if you're getting out of there. Like it is.
That's the thing. Like worse than death. Like, so we experienced that this weekend. My mom had to take my grandma to the hospital.
And drop them off at the front door.
And drop her off.
And you just,
someone who's having a hard time breathing, who's old, who's getting worse. And it's just like, I don't know if I'm going to see you again.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I think those are the things that are worse than death sometimes is that unknown, right? And that's the precautions that you have to take at the hospital. Now we're requiring those types of things to happen, you know? So those are, I feel like, almost like the secondary.
Yeah.
Well, seniors in general, like my grandma, who's like, I mean, she's kind of like my mom. Like we're very close. I haven't seen her in person in 8 months.
Yeah.
Like, and I go over there once a week. Like she's at a nursing home, and now they're the point where they'll let you visit her in like the
waiting room.
Yeah, like the end. Like she's in a nice nursing home. They just have like a little living room, right?
Yeah.
And so it's downstairs away from everybody else. But if you want to take her to go out on some outings, she's locked in her room for 14 days, like when she comes back, even if it's like, let's go get ice cream for 20 minutes. And I think that's, God, it's so unfortunate because a lot of them, especially with memory issues at that age, it's almost like every day they have to be reminded.
Totally.
Like, how come nobody's coming to visit me? Yeah. I guess maybe that helps them too, though. Like, nobody's visited me for 6 months. They can't remember that. But yeah, I mean, it sucks.
Yeah. There's no easy answer.
For sure.
Yeah. And I often go back to like, it's not about you. Like,
for sure.
Yes, you want to be with grandma and you want to take grandma out, but now you're reintroducing grandma to all these other people. Like at that point, It's not about grandma. It's about, you know,
everybody
all these
else
other people who are high risk. So it's just, and everybody has to, then find where that fits for them.
Right. Well, and there's ways around it, right? I mean, there's ways to, you just have to be creative. I mean, we're lucky to live in a time where we have FaceTime and where we have, you know, these other ways of communicating with people. I mean, imagine if this was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when there is no Zoom and people not being able to go to work. Ago. Like, yeah, if you didn't go to work, you know, if you shut an office down 10 years ago, you really companies go away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Amazon, UPS, FedEx, like,
yeah,
we haven't really had to suffer that much if you think about it, right?
Well, some people have.
Well, I mean, as far as our daily lives, what we're used to doing, being really affected by COVID, we've still lived pretty comfortable. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, it sucks if you have to quarantine at home with your family, but you can still order food. You can still have just about anything on earth delivered to your house. Like,
no, I hear what you're saying.
You know what I mean? So it could be way, way worse. But the thing that I'm interested in is are you seeing a change or an increase in knowledge of as far as how to treat it or getting the data that you need to kind of know
I know.
who's affected how. Are you seeing any of that or feeling any of that? Or do you feel like we're still kind of exactly where we were 6 months ago medically on what we know?
I know. So I can't say I sit at home every night and read the latest article, but we're pretty much the same place we were. We've been using 2 of the same drugs, pretty standard for sick patients requiring oxygen in the hospital. And there is a little bit of a decreased mortality with these, but it's not a big one. It's not like if I do this, they're going to get better, right?
Right.
And so that's what actually is really hard is kind of like I describe it like in the outpatient world, at least what I've heard is it's kind of a roller coaster ride. Like you think you're feeling better one day and the next day you've got a headache and you're in bed again. And then the next day you feel a little better. And it's the same with these patients in the hospital. They're just on this roller coaster ride and it doesn't matter. There's no rhyme or reason for why one day, and I mean, that's simplifying it, but why one day they get a lot worse and then you see them get a little bit better, but it's not this like straight line up or down. It's just this like,
right.
And
they may look better one day and then all of a sudden,
and then the next day they
2 steps backwards. The next.
Yeah. And it's just and it's a lot longer. So yeah.
Are you seeing a general age group or, I mean, I think we all are pretty familiar with those that are dying, at least where we find out about it. Like they generally say like 65 to 84 or 45 to 64. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing a group that is affected more than the other, or is it generally senior citizens that are passing away with it, or is it all over the place?
Keep in mind, how old was your grandma or grandpa?
She's almost 90.
Okay. So we rarely see the old people because they've either chosen to kind of, hey, I'm going to go on comfort care or just like do what you can for me, but I don't want to go and die in a hospital, right?
For sure. That's interesting.
So our patients who are needing intensive care, they're kind of the ones that we hope have like
they have more life to live. Okay.
I mean, that's not criteria that anybody like admits or doesn't admit on.
Right.
So don't get me wrong. I'm just saying from my experience, it is more like mid 80s occasionally, but I would say mostly like late 30s to mid 70s.
Wow. So, I mean, that kind of runs the gamut. I mean, that's surprising. I honestly thought I would hear that it was mostly elderly
I mean, you're
people.
not going to, like, you have an 88-year-old and they're getting worse. And it's like, hey, do you want me to intubate and do everything I can and put grandma on life support because that's what she needs to live? Most, like...
Oh, my grandma would say, if you put that... You take me out to a field. I want to see sun. I want to be happy.
Yeah.
I am not going to a damn hospital. I'm 90 years old. Things are great. Like,
and the chances of grandma surviving, like, yes, can we keep her alive with this? But the chance for ever being able to get off of it, you know?
For sure.
So those it's kind of a...
Interesting. See, that's something that I don't think any of us have ever thought of, is that I think most people, if you would ask them, who do you think the ICU, like who's in the ICU right now with COVID? They're going to say a bunch of old people. But it sounds like I never thought of the whole, once you hit a certain age, it's like, I'm not going to go get hooked up in the hospital. Like if it gets bad, it gets bad. Like I've lived a great life and we'll just roll the dice. It's more people that, for lack of a better way of saying it, are, still have years ahead of them and they want to fight it. So that's really interesting to me. I didn't think about that at all.
So when Corona started, you were still doing mainly outpatient care.
Yeah. So in March, I helped roll out all the testing. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so number wise, just going off of that, I mean, numbers then, I mean, especially here in Utah are very different than what we're looking at now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, 'cause I remember the huge spikes in Utah. I don't think we ever had more than like a 200
Isn't it funny to
positive
think
case
that I
day?
had to close for 9 weeks with numbers that were literally 10% of what we're putting out a day now?
I mean, it was
It's wild
a
to
couple
me.
hundred at max, and I don't think we ever had more than like. And this is what's so hard is everyone just becomes a number. right? Because people can just quote it. It's like 5 deaths. Like, no, those are 5 people.
For sure.
But it just becomes these numbers that people quote.
And a lot of that's the media. Like, I hate KSL. Every day, that's their headline. This many infected,
Cases, this many
died. It's like a running stat.
Yeah.
Which, I've never liked it. I think it's such a, you do have to tell people, I think it's important for us to know if we're making a dent or if it's going up. But it just,
What do you think
we're
about
desensitized to it, I think. And that's sad.
Yeah, at this point, I think we are. So numbers, so for instance, like the KSL number, like the total cases that day, like 10 to 14 days from that number is when I'll see you in the hospital. So like numbers wise, for us, it's important, right?
For sure.
Because we see a percentage of those people.
Okay.
But put a link, like keep a link pinned to the top of KSL,
Not
to
not
the
the
Utah
top of the-
COVID number, like, because they update that website every day, right? But don't make it a headline. I don't know. There's just something about it being a headline every single day that just, it does it.
No, I think people
it cheapens it.
Yeah, that's fair. The number that has always like stood out to me, like you're saying, so in March, it was like 1 in 1,000 people had an active case at any moment, right? As of last Wednesday, it was like 1 in 57. So, and then over Thanksgiving, it was right around like 1 in 20 and 1 in 30. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I go to a party and there's 20 people. I know at least one of those is going to have an active infection. My point is it computes a little bit better. And
That's the headline I think we need.
So this week it's 1 in 57. So, this was last Wednesday and that will be updated and hopefully that continues to trend.
There is a trend down. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
look at, KSL, it is just.
But every Utah family has 60 people in their family, like.
That's a very good point.
Like, just numbers wise, no matter what anybody says, one person will be, and so that's how you can determine, I guess, a little bit of your risk.
So I'm going to ask a hard question. You don't have to answer. We can edit it out. I want to hit some of like the urban myths, if you will, of Corona in those hospitals.
Okay.
How everyone who's kind of against Corona is like, oh, these numbers are all inflated. These cases
Hospital
aren't
beds are
real.
empty.
Hospital beds are empty. This death isn't even a Corona death. They died of something else. They're just doing it for money. Like, and if you can't answer, I'm fine. But I'm just curious. Like, is there any truth to any of that, or is that just crap?
So, to me, that's crap.
Okay.
And that's because I trust the organization I work for. Totally. Yes, do we test every single person that comes in the hospital for coronavirus? Yeah. But coronavirus, like say they died of a heart attack but also had coronavirus and we're calling it coronavirus, like nobody will ever know what it, like, but yes, they had coronavirus when they died of a heart attack. Like the virus, and viruses do this, like it is hypercoagulable. It makes you...
I don't know what that means.
So it's
I just went cross-eyed when you said that, actually.
It's like so it can increase, it's like increase your clotting ability.
Okay.
Which is heart attacks, strokes, blood clots.
So the heart attack may not have happened had you not had COVID.
I mean,
or maybe
clearly there was some
risk.
plaque there and maybe an unhealthy lifestyle. But yes, the inflammation from a virus, which is what all the symptoms are from. Exactly. So
when they're saying it was a COVID, because I mean, we've all heard they get funding for every COVID patient they have and every COVID death that they have, or, in the beginning we were told that if anybody was incubated, there was extra money in it. So I think that's the myth that a lot of people, it's like, are these numbers real? We
I don't
also know stories of people, like I have 3 or 4 friends that this happened to them where they needed treatment, but because of certain mandates at the time, they couldn't do anything elective, which there were still some people that needed something maybe considered elective, but they still needed like a cancer treatment or whatever it was. So I know of somebody that they wrote down that they had COVID so they can get them into the hospital. Huh. And so that was, I mean, this person too, the one that I'm talking about, but.
I mean, I feel like those.
Which I have no problem with that, I guess. But I mean, it does count.
you're talking about one person.
For sure.
Like,
well, I know
and
a few,
mistakes
but
are made. And yes, like, I don't know, has some lab sent a positive test to something that's like, I don't think anybody's intentionally doing anything. That's just what I choose to believe.
Isn't that funny how we assume that though? Because I think what you just said is the perfect answer.
You guys, these healthcare
People care. They're not doing that. It's not all about money. It's not all about.
She volunteered for this.
Yes.
And the doctors I work with who are so smart,
Right.
like they are going to do anything in their power to all the tools we have to save your loved one. Like it has been impressing me, even though it is such a hard disease to treat. Like,
Right.
So what does your day look like? I mean, as you're in the ICU in the corona, what is it called?
COVID ICU.
The COVID ICU. I mean, what does a day look like? Like what extra precautions do you have to do? You know, like, what does that look like?
What are you wearing? Like what kind of, I mean, I imagine you're in a whole get up, right? That sounded weird. What are you wearing? You know what I meant. Dang it.
No, it gets pretty technical and donning and doffing and the whole thing. But so the COVID ICU, it's actually a surge ICU. So we're housing like extra patients, and we've been full the past couple months. So it's an extra ICU on top of.
That's just made up.
What?
That you've been full for a couple months. Yeah. That's a lie. I'm joking, people.
No. And okay, and then there's almost like there's the clean side.
Sorry. So really quick, you've been full. How is it normal for ICUs to be full? Because that's something else I've heard. Like everyone keeps talking about the ICUs are almost full, but then like you'll hear reports of, well, they're always almost full. Is that true at all?
Okay. So this is a hard question. So in the summer, the MICU, medical ICU, would not always be full.
Okay.
They're going to be more full during the winter season when there's more respiratory illnesses and those types of things going around. Obviously, the COVID ICU never existed before, so this is an extra ICU.
That was a question I was going to ask. This is a totally separate ICU from the normal. Okay.
And the thing about full, so it is, do you have enough staff to staff these patients who are needing a super high level of care? So is it not always full? Was that your question?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you always have to have, maybe not have to, but you always want a bed or two open for the crazy one that's flying from Wyoming, like,
right. But I guess that question is kind of, maybe it's not relevant to the whole, because it's a separate ICU, right? Do most hospitals have a separate ICU for COVID?
Well, yeah. And now I think, and there's all kinds of like surge plans and stuff to be able to open, but you need the staff permit, and staff are coming from all over the organization to help staff this ICU. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's just one of those things that like people will say that and talk about it, and they don't, like, there's no way, like I always say, like, trust but verify.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way to really know what's behind it. So it's interesting to hear, like, we have it's extra staff, extra units. So yeah, we are obviously busier now, more staff, more patients now than before.
Right.
It's all numbers, you guys.
For sure.
If there's more people that have COVID, there is maybe the same percentage, but that still means more people that need hospital level care.
Yeah.
And so,
sorry. So I totally got you distracted. So like,
no, you're good.
So your day. So what happens?
Oh yeah. So I show up, I get in my COVID scrubs, and then there's kind of the clean side. There's an anteroom or a middle room, and then a dirty side or the unit. Okay. And
are COVID scrubs different than everyday scrubs?
No.
Okay.
Carhartt.
I guess like you wouldn't, like, you don't walk out in them though. Like they stay and get cleaned and whatever. But no, the typical, or the thing is, we wear PAPRs. So it's positive air. So I have like a machine on my back, a belt, and it's connected to a hose that's connected to a hood over my face. that is,
I can imagine like a hazmat suit.
yeah. So it's continually
Filtering.
filtering the air, yeah.
Okay.
Because when I go in the unit, that's considered dirty air. All these patients are sharing
sure.
that out. And, gown, gloves. And this PAPR doesn't come off at all.
Wow.
So you're in that all
has to be
day.
annoying.
Well, I take my hats off to the nurses. They get their breaks and stuff, but you can't drink with it on. You can't pee with it on. Like it's like always this, should I take that extra sip of coffee before I go in versus like,
Right. Before I put the scuba gear on.
yeah, no, it's a process. And then taking it off, obviously, like that's one of the higher risks of contamination. So you just have to be super diligent and
You can't just take it off to go
no.
drink some water. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
process to take.
Yeah,
it off,
cleaning and removing and recleaning and so
Has there been a shortage of like supplies in that area for you guys?
so not that I've experienced.
Okay.
Early on, we were doing things like saving masks just in case we needed to reuse them and those types of things. But I have never been in need of something I needed to feel safe.
Okay.
With where I work, which I'm grateful for. I know like the wipes, the Sandy wipes and stuff, there's always a sign like use carefully.
Right. Don't steal.
Yeah. So like what about like your day-to-day life as a mom and a wife?
I know.
Like how has that changed?
Maybe we should ask Brighton.
Right. Mom's worked more for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like are you having to like completely change the way you live so you don't risk exposure, so you don't come, you know what I mean? Like
no,
is it
that's fair. So I'm pretty aware of, yes, if I recently worked and kind of, I personally am more worried about ever infecting someone else. I'm super grateful for the ages my kids are, just because we know this virus isn't as deadly, in the younger group, and my kids are younger. But
I imagine for your job, you've got to be vigilant, right? Because you don't want to contract it.
yeah, I mean, and that's where, like, for me, it's not hard. Like, I'm used to it. I'm very aware of what touches what. Like, my first thought when I grabbed this was like, when's the last time they sanitized this thing?
I mean, we're pretty good. About every month or so.
But so then I touch it. I don't know the answer to that, and now I know I need to sanitize my hands before
Right.
I touch my mask. Like, my point is I feel like,
But is that something like you've always done? Like
it's been heightened for sure.
Okay.
I would say, and probably for most people.
Hopefully we all become more like hygienic,
I mean,
right?
Never hurts.
I could go OCD pretty quick. So like I'm trying to curb that, but no, I do
That's
feel
why I
like
hugged you when you walked in. I just,
I do feel like I could do things and be safe, but I don't go out of my way to.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question?
for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just always
you
curious
can't completely shut it down. I mean, and that's what I wondered. Are medical people,
because like you hear stories of like once again you hear stories,
right?
but it's like they had to rent a camper because they couldn't even see their family on their breaks. You know what I mean? So like they're living separately from family. Like, why is that real? I mean, I guess that's a necessary precaution.
You mean healthcare workers?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think like we don't know who their family are. Like if
Yeah.
I lived with grandma, yeah, you better believe I would have like change all my clothes, sanitize everything in the garage. But I actually probably wouldn't live with grandma
Right,
now that
just
I'm even
mitigate the
saying
risk.
that. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's a very real, and that's again for everybody to determine, but it's also not about you. So, like me just working on the COVID unit and then getting on an airplane, like I don't know, that doesn't seem fair, situation, but that's where I've landed.
Yeah.
There are work colleagues that are much stricter.
Is it something you guys internally talk a lot about?
No,
What about
because
testing?
just like on the outside, you feel judged no matter
Yeah.
which way you are.
Yeah.
That probably I didn't.
Your kids are in school. oh, whoa,
Yeah.
so it's the same.
So are you guys able to test yourselves more often, or is it becoming
I know.
easier to make it so like I know that if I go home, I can test myself, just kind of make sure, or?
So so the answer is no. We get
Right.
tested if we're symptomatic.
Interesting.
But not the problem with testing, because it's what we have, but there is such a big incubation period with this virus that testing almost provides too much of a
A false sense of security.
yeah, because say you have a known exposure this day, and you get tested 5 days later, but the incubation period is 10 days.
Interesting.
And you get a negative test here and start living your life, and then your symptoms show up on day 10. People, that's not how it's supposed to work. So we actually don't recommend testing while you're asymptomatic. You just have to do the 10-day post-exposure quarantine.
Right.
But people don't do that, right?
Yeah.
So the answer to your question is no, we don't get tested regularly unless we're symptomatic.
Why do you think the testing has, been such a challenge? Is it just
I know.
we've never experienced such a mass, crazy amount, a demand?
Mm-hmm.
Or because that's something that I am always surprised at is one, the number of types of tests. You got the one where they poke your brain. You can spit in. I've heard that you can spit in a cup. You have the rapid results, all of these different
Yeah.
things, and it's crazy that we're not closer to and maybe we are. And I just don't know, some type of uniform testing.
Yeah.
result.
Over the counter.
Something quicker.
I've always thought it was kind of crazy that we could create a vaccine as fast as we did, but we still don't have masks, good masks or tests. I would imagine the testing is, but I guess you're right. The incubation period, I never really thought about that. So the testing isn't really that effective.
No,
And,
to get the answers you're looking for, am I safe to be around grandma? You would have to test yourself every day
Yeah.
until you're vaccinated.
But even then you're saying that you can still test, you can still get a negative, but it could still show up. It could still show up a few days later.
Yeah.
But as long as you test negative that day, are you okay to be with that person that day? Or are you technically...
I don't think you should think that way now.
Right. Okay. Well,
if
no,
you've
and
had a
that's-
known exposure, right? This
I
is
gotcha.
all
So if you don't know that you've had you haven't been exposed to it, let's say that for all you know, everything's fine,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I test myself today to go hang out with my grandma
Mm-hmm.
without any known exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Is that safe, or could I still...
So
Maybe I'm not clear. Maybe I'm not... I guess I'm just asking, can you have
Does
it
that
and
give
still
you
test
some-
negatively?
Yeah, so that's the other thing. So these tests, it's all about the sensitivity and specificity of the test. And there's been a big range
Right.
on all of these things depending on how it's done, which has been challenging, right? Oh, I tested negative. Oh, I'm fine. So and this is where I do feel like there are some things we can do. You test negative, cool. That doesn't mean you get to go sit in grandma's house maskless for
Right.
2 hours.
Right.
You can go have a mask on, stay 6 feet apart, and be outside. And even if you test positive later that night, you would have very little
Chance of passing it.
exactly.
If you stick to
And
all
so
those simple...
yes, washing your hands, before you go in there, and above everything, if you feel sick, if you're having any symptoms whatsoever, don't.
This is the one that has me pissed off with people.
What?
Well, so many people go out and just think it's just a cold. I'm good. And they go out. I think right now we're at a point where it's if you feel anything, you just stay home. Mm-hmm. We never got tested. I didn't see the point. There was no treatment for it. There was I was okay, but I took the quarantine thing very seriously. We kept our whole family home
Mm-hmm.
for 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need a test to tell me that. I had zero taste or smell, and my nose was not stuffy. I tried to sniff a can of gasoline and didn't smell a dang thing. I'm like, this is COVID. So we're just going to stay home. And we kept the kids home. But it's amazing how many people justify doing the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, like you said, if we're in that right now, currently 1 in 57, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty decent.
I mean, you're going to have more than
chance,
that
right?
people walking in your restaurant today, right?
I just want them all to stay out. No, yes, please come to my restaurant, please. It's okay. We're wearing masks, but yeah, I mean, it's affected us too, and it's. But at some point, and maybe the vaccine is that point, but at some point, when do we just say like, we can't? At some point, we've got to figure out how to live with it, right? Without being like, I don't think we can sustain the level of restriction that we even have now. You know, you're seeing it really affect younger kids now. Like we're really starting to see the effects
mentally.
of being away from their classrooms and being away from other kids. You're seeing parents going insane because their kids are home all day, every day. At what point do we have to just say this is like the flu and try to evolve with it? Or, you know, do you get what I'm saying?
I do. And I don't have an answer. It's not like the flu, by the way.
Right. Well,
Let's just...
and I'm not relating it to the flu. I'm just saying, like with influenza,
No, you're
we
like,
kind of
you
treat
go
it
on.
like you're gonna get the flu every couple years. It's just, and this is what you do when you get it. But I mean, the amount of businesses that are shutting down and go, like, at what point do we?
So there's
And
a
maybe
lot
the
of different
vaccine
ways. Yeah,
handles that for
I'm
us.
very hopeful with the vaccine. I really am.
Have you? You're
I got-
healthy. You got it, right?
Yeah, I got my first shot.
How are you feeling?
Fine. I didn't have any side effects.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I know. It was
Were you a
good
little
day.
nervous when you got it?
No.
No, not at all. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the damage, unfortunately, I think has been done. So even if like all restrictions were let loose, people are still going to be nervous about things,
Right.
which is fair. The other side of it is kind of the healthcare system and how that affects the economy. So if we're letting this thing fly and I've got the 40 to 70-year-olds in my ICU and now dad is disabled and can't work for his family because he got COVID. Like there's,
For sure.
so I am like, this is a little bit of a moot point now because we do have a vaccine.
Right.
And
But I still think we're very far from people
We are.
like, being okay
no,
with
I've
the
had
vaccine.
to give. Well, okay, yeah, that's fine. But the people who should be worried about getting COVID, I think, are the ones that will be getting it
For sure.
And that's so that's fair.
Do you think all the concern with the vaccine? There's been
What's the
kind of this
concern? Remind me.
anti-vaccine movement going on for a few years before any of this, but this one seems to be. I think
there's-
people are
It's just
not.
the speed in which it was
Well,
created.
but what's funny is that's the speed we could create everything if there wasn't bureaucracy, and so that's kind of what I think with this. It's like
And
this
there's
is
money
this is
thrown at it.
right. This is dangerous enough that it's like, hey, we're pulling out all the bureaucratic crap and we're just going to let this thing fly through. We could probably create vaccines that fast for just about everything if everyone was focused on it the way they have been.
Well, I also heard another thing that's helped it move faster is so many people have it that you can test it and you can get results much quicker
Right.
than any other type of,
And thousands of the smartest scientists in the entire world just
all
focus
on one thing.
Yeah.
That's not true. Just kidding. Hopefully everybody knows that's my joke. I just keep saying that's not true.
So, I mean, for people that are like nervous about the vaccine, do you get that in the hospital? Like, are people nervous to get it or is everyone pretty excited?
I mean, so we're like phase 1A or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got all the healthcare workers who have seen the sickest of the sick COVID patients for the last 8 months.
Yeah.
Like there's no question in anybody's brain. And it's a really like, it's almost like a weight has been lifted, like just a really positive feeling
Imagine how
inside the hospital.
Yeah, how you would feel about the vaccine if you see what these guys see every day.
I can't imagine.
You'd just be like, where's the truck? Like, let's go. I'm in. And it's very true. Like it's now the vaccine for most people like me, I had it, everything's fine. Like is that as good as the vaccine?
I know. So we still don't know.
Right.
Yeah, we have no idea. I was just listening to something on the way down here where the vaccine might last a little bit longer than if you got a COVID infection.
Right.
And furthermore, but we don't know that. We also don't know if you've gotten the vaccine, can you not get the virus, but can you be a carrier and give it to someone else eventually? Right. So like, it's
There's
not going to
still a lot of
stop me
unknowns.
from wearing a mask type of a thing. And then,
So what are kind of expectations then, like internally from the medical world, like with the vaccine starting to roll out, like what are like realistic expectations? Is it that it slows it down? Is it, that people can start to lift some of the restrictions? Like in your world, what does the vaccine like look like down the road?
Getting rid of COVID-19.
Okay.
Like
you think we can eradicate it completely?
That specific strain, I don't see why we can't.
Okay. Interesting. That makes me happy to hear, actually.
So, and then like you're also like it's herd immunity, right? But at a forced or a immunization level.
Yeah.
And then.
So you wonder, does the herd immunity count for those that have recovered from it just naturally? And with the, I guess it
and
would
that's
just
where
need
we don't
to know
know.
more. Right?
I know it's so tough. And then it's the question, because there's such a large spectrum on the severity of illness, like those asymptomatic people they clearly didn't build up as big of an immune response. So do they have as like sturdy of antibodies that protects them from reinfection as somebody who got really sick and mounted
That's
more of an
interesting.
immune
So
response?
the symptoms, I mean, obviously the more symptoms, the harder your immune system has to work to fight it off.
I mean,
is that how it is with most things?
no. So, and that's super simple. And I actually don't know if I'm saying the right thing. It just, that makes sense in my head.
Right.
Because the couple instances that I've heard of reinfection, like from China and stuff, the first positive test was from an asymptomatic person. Right. And then anyways.
I was reading about Wuhan yesterday. Like they're sending out tourist brochures now, like no masks, fully reopened. Like, I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, it was New York Times where I read it, but I just thought that was really interesting. Like what's different about, I mean, it's a city of 11 million people. Mm-hmm. Like how come they're at a point where they can just, I guess they had a 76-day lockdown. Like you couldn't leave your home.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I mean, you're trying to invite tourists in. I don't think that would be smart, right? So, I mean, they gave it to everybody. Maybe we should send some COVID people back in there, but it's, well, I mean, wasn't it created in a lab? I mean, I don't think that's Instagram hearsay. I think that's been,
Oh my God.
No? Yes, Bobbi, let's talk about this.
No, I'm not the
Conspiracy
expert on
theories.
this.
Bobbi, come on. How do you feel? Who'd you vote for? I'm just kidding.
So I want to know what's been like the mental health of the healthcare workers. Like,
yeah.
That's a good question.
What has that been like, having to experience it every single day, but like the hardest and the nastiest part of it?
I don't know. Like we have had a lot of support. We get emails probably weekly, like, hey, if you need extra help, this type of thing. I don't know how many people are utilizing that or needing that. There is also some, I
guess there's
like, go ahead.
There's a part of it where if you're in the ICU, you kind of see that always.
Oh, totally.
That's a
These
good point.
patients,
Right?
yeah, yes,
That's a good
these
point.
people. But like, there's also a feeling of satisfaction, but also I'm doing something, and a little bit of like control over this COVID situation. Like at least I'm doing something instead of like, I think I would have a lot harder time. Like, oh, I guess I'm just going to sit around and wait till I get, whereas like
Right.
and there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from that, but it is a lot of, like the illness is super hard because these patients are really sick for a long time and not getting better,
Yeah.
When did you know you wanted to do all this? I don't think I've ever asked you that as a friend. So when I met Bobbi, you were playing women's soccer at BYU. You were like top 5 in the nation when you played.
Yes.
You guys were, see my Coach Rockwood bobblehead over there, showing my respect. But When did you know? Because you have, it's funny for anybody that knows her and her husband. I don't think you can get a more perfect match. Like, they're kind of perfect for each other. Like, they're both two of the most like physically and mentally strong people that I know, and they're very competitive, and they're just kind of badasses. But I never really, we knew each other. I mean, some of the greatest vacations I've ever had in my life were because of Bobbi. But I never really talked to you about that. Like, is that what you always wanted to do, was be in the medical field?
Not necessarily. And I don't think this is a good story. Like, there wasn't.
You have a tendency to think that about a lot of things, Bobbi.
Sorry.
But we will be the judge of that.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. No, it wasn't. So my mom's side of the family has a bunch of medical people, and not so much on my dad's side. I think I liked the idea of helping people, but also like staying grounded a little bit to real humans and real experiences. I became a nurse. And also I remember being logical, like, I'm a woman, I need to be able to take care of myself. I need a career, type of thing. And then once I became a nurse, I guess I just like information. I like learning. I like being good at what I'm doing. And it was kind of the natural next step to become a nurse practitioner.
Did you know that around that time, like when we got to know each other, like college?
No, I don't think I thought very hard about any of it. I just was like...
So after you graduated college, got your bachelor's, that's when it started.
Yeah, I was like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do.
Because if you think about it, you're wired perfectly to do what you're doing, right? Do you think that? Like, you're just you're tough. Like, you have a tough,
very logical.
But you also have a really good, how do I say this without it sounding weird? Like, you have a very sweet side to you. Like, you have, like, I imagine your bedside manner. It's this perfect kind of mix of this just tough, can handle anything person, very smart, but also
compassionate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cam.
Anyway.
No, people very rarely see my sweet side.
I've seen it. I love it. I don't think that's totally true. I think since you've been a mom, I think being a mom kind of brings that out of people too. Because that's I still say it's the hardest job on earth. But
yeah, it's hard.
It's, especially when Brighton's your first one. Bobbi Brandon Jr. She's really both of you junior, right? Mm-hmm. Brighton's awesome. But her daughter Brighton is in here with us. I guess I should clarify that. But I just always wondered that. I didn't know, because I knew you. I thought you were just a nurse. I kind of feel like an idiot not knowing that you were on another level.
A baller.
Yeah. Baller. I mean, I already knew she was a baller. Trust me. But I'm always kind of fascinated to hear that. That's a type of profession that you really have to want to do it, I think, to pursue, because to pursue it just because of what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's been awesome. And like, there's so much variety within the medical field that, if you want to learn something else or like, it's neat.
So is this shaped your, I don't know, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, this experience with COVID changed your plans at all for the future, as far as what part of the medical field you want to be in, or you just want to help?
Yeah, I want to be good at my job. I want to help.
What would you say is like the number one thing you've learned? Because you talk about you enjoy learning and you want to, that's kind of why you volunteered. Like, is there like a main takeaway?
No. My brain like hurts so bad at the end of every day.
Yeah.
Because patients are so
that was going to be the question.
So different.
Yeah.
People are just in general like getting more complicated because we do have amazing healthcare, but that also allows people to
have
be
access
sick.
to information.
Will be sick and still be alive.
Right.
And
ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and
that'd be a fun wormhole to go down.
What I am hopeful for, and I think we've seen a little bit of this, but people have stopped taking responsibility for their health a little bit and just assuming that we can fix everything and, take this pill and, take that pill, and not understanding that it's not that simple ever. And this is
No one's
something
talking about like get healthy.
Yeah,
with
this
Corona.
is
But whose
like,
fault is that?
and
You know what I mean?
well,
Because there's a
your-
whole lot of money on the other side of it too. So
For
you
sure.
kind of wonder.
yeah,
you know?
advertising to you, yeah.
We're the
no.
only country in the world where it's legal to advertise prescription drugs on TV. Do you know that? The only one in the world. But it's like every other commercial. I hate the actors in those commercials. I don't know why. Because it's just like they're acting. I don't know if they know, like, when you're throwing that baseball, we're talking about you having like a massive hemorrhoid condition. Or, you know, do you think they know when they're filming those commercials that they have herpes in the commercial? Anyway,
It's like
sorry.
Joey on
so
Friends.
for the first, not the first time, but in a long time, like this is the first time you're coming to the medical field and we're saying, sorry, we have no idea what to do or
Yeah.
how to fix this. But if you maybe were a little bit healthier before you got it, you could have had a better outcome, you know, which is like, so
You're like, hey, you want me to get you anything from the vending machine? Help you
well,
out a
the
little
point is I have heard of a lot of patients who immediately stopped smoking in March, you know,
bit?
and
For sure.
And I think that maybe if they recognize that, yeah, we can't fix everything, and I do need to take a little bit more responsibility for making sure, no matter what comes, I'm my best self.
Better chance.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's what Joe Rogan talks about all the time. He's just like, stop freaking out about it. Just get active. Take your vitamin D, which I think
Yeah,
that's
do
been
what you-
debunked already now. But or they vitamin D was the one they were talking about like crazy. Vitamin D, zinc, but now they've kind of found out that maybe it doesn't prevent it as much as they thought. But obviously, still a great thing to take. But
I think most people are in general are deficient in vitamin D.
For
and
sure.
so if you just
Especially
get back
here.
to where you normally should be, right?
right,
Then that's maybe
right.
why.
No,
So-
I think it's important.
Has your opinion evolved as time has gone on, or maybe if you've experienced it more, or do you feel like you've kind of always felt the same way about it?
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah, how do you not become cynical towards people dealing with that all the time?
I know. I guess I see both sides, and even within my family, there's
Sure.
like pretty crazy opposites, and so
Everybody has different things that they have to deal with, right?
well, and
we
they all
can't-
have their
it's
own
hard to
circumstances.
empathize.
So I truly try not to judge,
right.
and I truly like, and then I just yeah. But no, I would say I've stayed pretty gray. Like I do recognize that we have to live our lives, and I want my kids to have healthy,
Social life and
yeah.
right.
But I think you can also do those in a somewhat safe way. Like you don't have to be belligerent and
See, I think that's a super important reminder, and I think because those
It's not all or nothing.
yes,
it's not like I've stayed home since March.
Yeah.
right, right.
Like
and I think people look at it whenever I hear or see a YouTube video of somebody like quoting the 1964 civil liberty law about the mask. I just want to strangle them. Like, seriously? Like, you are spitting on the people that fought for that? I mean, civil liberty, really? For a mask? I think it's good for us to hear from people like you that are actually in it, where it's just like, look, guys, it helps. Like, it helps to wear a mask. Don't shut your life down. But the mask is not the end of the world. I really struggle with it sometimes, but I've gotten to the point now where it's like, I get it.
it's not, and then it's not about you. I had this experience. I had a patient I was caring for in the ICU. It was an older lady, maybe mid 70s, and she ended up doing okay, but she was there for a couple weeks on a lot of oxygen. And one day I came in her room, she was feeling better, and she starts going off about the person going the wrong way in the grocery store aisle. Like swearing, like, can you believe this? And in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, that was me yesterday. Like I was going the wrong way because you don't look at the things,
We drive on the right,
And
Bobby. You should walk on the right.
I remember getting really annoyed by this grandma who looked at me really horribly and was like, please notice the arrows next time,
Right.
And I was like, oh, you're in a bad mood.
Oh, you're talking about the COVID era. Like, now that they have
You can
one
only go.
way.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, I was just, to me, that's common sense anywhere. Like,
Oh, the right side. No,
Yes.
I'm talking
No.
like you can only
Okay.
go one direction in the supermarket.
It's like downtown Chicago. It's all one-way streets.
Absolutely. Right.
Anyways,
Now I get it.
this patient is telling me this, and I'm like recently annoyed that grandma yelled at me at the grocery store. And I was like, but she was so, like, her worst nightmare came true. And, you know, she's in the ICU. And again, she did fine, but like she in her mind was relating it to these people who are imposing, you know, their rules, and they're not to irritate you or to make you mad, and they actually
Or to control you.
Well, they actually do help a lot of people feel more comfortable, and grandma might live by herself and is the only one that can go out and get groceries, and so she has to. Anyways,
Right.
My point is I now follow the arrows because I'm like, okay, Bobbi, that is an easy thing. Like, you know, and just kind of little things like that.
Well, and I would imagine, like I've heard this from a few police officer friends lately, that everyone's an attorney, right? Like with things that they're dealing with right now, like they can't just simply speak to everybody speaks down to them like they know more than they do. Are you seeing any of that? I would imagine.
I mean, that's been for a while now, ever since like Google
WebMD.
and whatever. Yeah. Like
Just
I'm always up against.
The hypochondriac.
They come in and tell you it's wrong.
Oh, yeah. Always.
But you don't see that any worse, though, with COVID? Like, I would imagine, because so many people have such strong opinions about COVID and treatment and masks.
Oh, we've taken care of a handful of people who have COVID, bad COVID, and we discharge them, and they still don't believe they had COVID.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean...
Wow.
Yeah. So, like, we're not making this up. Like, we don't want this any more than you do. I'm not, yeah, it's crazy.
For sure.
You would love to get back to doing what you were doing before, probably.
Yeah. And I feel for everyone else who's suffering on some level or another.
Do you have friends in different states that in the same position as you?
Maybe a couple, like that I went to school with.
Like, are experiences different depending on the state you live in?
Oh, yeah, I think so. And also kind of the surge, right? So a bunch of our doctors here actually flew out and helped in New York, right?
I remember that. They were paying, right? Wasn't it a pretty good... I remember some nurses that got paid quite a bit to go out there for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Which is awesome for them.
I mean, that's also like... That's not new, right? So even like when you deploy firefighters to go help a wildfire, like they're getting paid really well too. And yeah. Anyways, what was your question?
Like, is the
it's
experience different
different
in states?
I think Utah's handled it really well. It's obviously my only experience.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
But
like, you don't hear that very much. Like, of course, you don't hear it because people are just negative online and where you hear things, but you know, generally all I hear is people pissed at the governor or pissed at this or pissed at that. So it's kind of cool to hear you say that you think that the states handle it pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot of my colleagues who would argue like schools should never have started back up. I mean, that's essentially when we started to see the rise, right? And so...
But do you think the benefit... Maybe you don't want to answer this, but do you think the benefit outweighs, you know, with kids and socializing?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe colleges, but man, I'm really struggling with this age group being out of school.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess our kids are mostly back in school, but it's still, I don't know. I can see it. Like especially my sons.
Yeah.
Like they're hitting a wall right now. And I think a lot of, there's no hockey right now. There's no sport. Like they've shut sports down for kids.
Yeah.
And if they haven't mandated it, a lot of places are just doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the days are short. It gets dark at 5 o'clock. Like they're going nuts.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I know.
Before the vaccine, did you guys have like light at the end of the tunnel, or has the vaccine provided that for you?
The vaccines provided that.
Yeah. Is that
because we're not even close to like herd immunity numbers wise.
Yeah.
Not even close.
And so, but is this kind of re-energizing the health space?
Mm-hmm.
Like all the workers, like, okay, we're making progress finally. Because I would imagine that for a while it probably felt like, I don't know if we're making a lot of, because we're still learning and we don't have answers and we don't have a treatment, you know, like, I don't know.
No, Yes, I would agree with all of that. That the vaccine has provided that for sure.
That's good to hear. You have to get 2 shots, right?
Yeah.
So how long do you have to wait till the second one?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. That's
so
not
that
bad.
would be my only other thing I would say. Yes, the vaccine has provided a lot of hope, but I don't think things will be changing anytime soon. Like I think we'll be, because 3 weeks later you get a second vaccine, and then it's 2 to 3 weeks for like full immunity, right? So that's a 6-week process too. Right. So like, just for me being one of the first, and then to get the general public and the people who need it vaccinated, the other people who need it vaccinated.
So are they talking about are they wanting the more the merrier that get it? Or is it, I guess we kind of covered this earlier, but are there groups of people that just don't need to worry about getting it?
I mean, I don't think anybody's going to force you to get the vaccine, even on my end. Like, it wasn't like, hey, like...
You had access to it, but it's not like you had to take
nobody
it.
was forcing me to...
See, that's interesting, too.
To get
I
it.
bet a lot of people are just, at least the foil hatters, right? Are just thinking like, oh, they're forcing it on our healthcare workers. They have to get it. But you didn't.
For me...
It wasn't forced on you.
No, yeah. For me, so even though I think I would handle COVID fine, because I'm fairly young and healthy.
She's a badass. Go ahead.
And if I didn't, in my mind, that was like, if I needed ICU, like that was between me and God, right? And I was, but where was I going with that?
Just the people getting vaccinated, or who needs to, who doesn't need to? That was the original question.
Oh, I don't know. Sorry.
Hey, it's okay.
I lost my train of thought.
So
okay, we'll get back to it.
So be brutally honest. On a scale of 1 to 10, how irresponsible is it for me to really want the Jazz to let people go to games this year?
Like all the seats full.
Well, how else are we going to pay those two? Like, didn't they both just get $200 million contracts?
Yeah.
We got to sell some tickets.
Yeah, very irresponsible. Like, I mean, like, that's how the virus is transmitted.
Yeah.
For sure.
Close spaces, people you don't know, screaming and spitting out their mouth that's landing on you.
Especially Jazz fans. They're obnoxious people.
Yeah,
They scream and spit a lot.
Yep.
So you've mentioned, it's funny. I feel like over the last few months, I have felt that there's been more of a focus on droplets, like more of it being airborne. You've mentioned touch a lot. Like you've mentioned sanitizing surfaces. Is that the OCD talking, or is that still a very, very real
droplets
transmission
land.
problem? Right. But they don't,
So bigger droplets like gravity, they land on things.
Right.
Also, you're touching stuff and then you're touching other things. But I would argue I would hope very few people are maskless and coughing, which is what you could inhale, right? And so for me being out in public, I would hope you're not coming out sick. And then, so the biggest risk is like bigger droplets from touching.
So it still can absolutely, like if you touch it with your hand, a droplet, and rub your eye.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long it lives on surfaces. I think I used
that's
to
the
hear
thing. I feel like in the beginning they talked a lot. People were doing things like not touching their groceries that got delivered for 24 hours.
They were quarantining food.
Right. And I know there's still some people that do that, but for the most part, I feel like the whole droplet or like transmitting it by touching something.
Yeah.
That has kind of gone away. I feel like they're not talking about that as much, but you have been. So
well, and maybe I missed like droplet and airborne. We take precautions, airborne, mask.
So is this more contagious than other viruses?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that too.
Which is like, that's what the virus is going for. Like that's
true.
Good on it, Right. And then it also like wants to make you sick, so you spew it all over so it keeps living, but it doesn't want to kill you too quickly or too, because then it dies too. So like it's a pretty from a virus perspective, it's
kind of weird humanizing a virus like that. Like that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. Like it's a pretty good virus, man. He's pretty good. He does a really good job. That's crazy. Well, I think this has been a great reminder because we need to.
It's good to get different perspective from someone who's in it.
And a perspective from somebody that's actually like in it every day.
Oh,
but not like crazy dramatic.
Very not dramatic. It was awesome. Sorry, you remembered.
Yeah, this is going back. So for me, knowing these kind of weird long-term sequelae, I think we're going to get more information on that. Will the vaccine also eliminate those risks? That was important for me. I don't want
long-term
chronic
risks?
headaches, chronic fatigue, like these things that
there's probably things we don't even know about that will start coming to light maybe over time.
And so even though, again, I feel like I would do fine if I got the virus, I was excited to hopefully prevent some of those things.
And you probably, I mean, are you hearing more and more? I imagine, I don't know how they pass information on to you guys or if it's more up to you personally to go out and actively search it. But do you notice new information coming in quite frequently as far as new things that they've learned, or is it still
with how to treat it, or what do you
just all of it, like understanding?
I mean, there are so
people or
I know
past. Like the CDC did shorten their quarantine recently from like 10 to 14 to 7 to 10, which I don't like because they're always going to take the lower number. You can't say 7 to 10 if 7 doesn't do it, right? You just need to say 10.
Well, I don't think they would say it if it didn't do it.
Well,
but why 7 to 10?
Because so it's 7 days plus 24 hours of no symptoms. So it could be up to.
Oh, okay.
But if you're still having symptoms at day 7, like still coughing and stuff, then you are automatically extending.
Are you extending 7 days from that day?
No.
Okay. So once you're past 7, you need to go a full 24 hours without symptoms before you're good to go out. See, that's what they should freaking say. Not 7 to 10. You say 7 to 24 hours symptom free. So I'm not mad at you, Andrew. I'm sorry. I'm looking at you while I say this. He's looking guilty over there. Well, I really appreciate you talking about this stuff. I'm sure that I don't know if I would be excited to talk about barbecue with somebody on a podcast just because it's your job, right? But
yeah, I mean, I definitely feel.
But I think you're helping people by doing this.
Like I'll be surprised if people listen. It's fine.
I won't. See, I think this one's actually going to be a pretty popular one.
People will be really interested to hear your perspective.
Because we don't have, our perspectives come from government people, which nobody trusts. The news, which nobody trusts at all. The internet, which they're a bunch of idiots. Like, we don't really get like frontline information from somebody.
Well, the fact that the world we live in, that you have, and I'm not choosing sides, but you're just stating facts. You have the president says one thing, science says one thing, this person says this thing. It's just like
it's all over the place.
And then you don't know anybody who's been affected seriously from it. So it's like, okay, in my world, it's not that bad.
Yep.
For some people's world, it's terrible. And those are the people I'm seeing. And it's
a strong reminder.
And like, I get that it's maybe not that bad in your world. I really do. But again,
that's your world.
Yeah, exactly.
Like your reality is not reality, right? It is for you. But I think that's the hardest thing for people to realize and recognize is, yeah, it might not have been bad for me, but for this person it was. So mask up.
And we live on a planet with other people.
Yeah.
Like
too many of them. Way too many. Just kidding.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Really, seriously, this was awesome. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
When I texted Bobbi the other day, it was kind of a no to start. And then she warmed up to it. And I think you're doing here what you do for like this will help a lot of people. And I think it will kind of help people maybe hopefully reassert themselves in being smart with social distancing for now.
Yeah.
Wearing their masks out in public and just doing those little things that can help. Because it's true, like the vaccine's going to help, but it's kind of going along the lines of what you said about, people need to be more proactive about their health. Like the vaccine's not going to instantly fix everything. So what I'm worried about are people are going to start seeing numbers dropping because now we're in the 1,000s every day. Vaccines here. So are people going to start? Because I think we all want to get back to normal.
Totally.
Right. And I think that that's coming. I really do. But I think the better we are at doing the things we're supposed to be doing, the faster that will happen. Let's just shoot for the 4th of July. Like if we're all good, maybe. Between all the sunlight and the vaccine, maybe. But anyway, thanks, Bobbi. You're awesome.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
So fun.